Hey guys, and welcome back to Hoosier Hardware. Today we're talking one last time about this particular PC that I highlighted on my last video, so I'll go ahead and leave a card in case you want to check out the finer details. But basically, we have a very budget system that was put together mostly of parts just laying around here. So now I want to actually put this thing through its paces with some modern games as well as some esports titles to see just generally how well a quad-core i5 3470 performs in 2019 with an RX 570. So before we actually jump into those benchmarks, let's go ahead and highlight the specs of this system. We have an RX 570 4GB GPU paired with an i5 3470 CPU. That's 4 cores, no hyper-threading, just the 4 physical cores, and we only have 8GB of DDR3 RAM. For storage, even though we're running the games off an external drive, we did go ahead and throw in a 120GB SSD, and that's the boot drive, and that's paired with a 1TB WD Blue drive from Western Digital. So this whole system put together is just a smorgasbord of what was laying around in my closet and just generally around the sort of office space here. So I wanted to take advantage of those parts laying around and put together a system that I could then sell. The only brand new component on this entire build is this Matrix 30 case from Deepcool. There are some complaints I had about this case in general, like using a sticker to say that this was glass, but the sticker was one of those that just sort of tears in half as you peel it away, leaving a lot of adhesive and some paper left behind. So it was a little bit more difficult to remove than I wanted, as well as on the backside here, the top slot that I'm actually using for my display out, specifically my HDMI out, I have to cut this sort of bent over metal here just because it's in the way of the actual HDMI plug. So for that purpose, I was able to cut away some metal there. And I've done this on this case in the past. It's my biggest complaint with this actual case. In fact, one of my only real major complaints that I have with this case, considering it is $30, plus I think normally I pay $5 in shipping on Newegg. But other than those two things, it's actually a great case because it does have this side glass panel, and also it actually has some really solid ventilation up front with one included fan in the back, which is able to keep this system cool enough to maintain clocks on both the GPU and CPU front. The GPU does get up into the low 80 degrees, but as the fan ramps up, it does stabilize. So it's not really starved for air too much, and you can always add a fan in the front to help mitigate some of that temperature as well. But the system works really well together. It actually is a fairly balanced system as well, as those benchmarks will show. And now that I've talked enough about this system, let's go ahead and hop right into those benchmarks. Overwatch was first up with testing with an average FPS of 136 and great experiences on the 1% and 0.1% lows as well, everything being above 60 FPS. This was a great experience on this system. The Witcher 3 was up next, and even though we averaged a solid 60 FPS in these settings, I will note that when new areas were loading, just like with a lot of systems, this particular game has an issue where it does like to stutter as those new areas do load in, especially when you first hop into the game. I will say that did smooth itself out significantly, so even though that 0.1% low number is pretty low, I didn't experience a long-lasting negative impact. It was mostly when I was going into just those new areas, and it did seem to iron itself out after a few minutes. PUBG was up next, and yet again this was a great experience, averaging 81 FPS and a 1% low there of 58. I didn't really experience any sort of major stuttering whatsoever, so this was an overall great experience, and I had no problems whatsoever with this game. Anno 1800 may have been the toughest game for this system to run, and that's likely because the CPU is pushed a little bit harder in this game than otherwise, and that's in addition to this game already being fairly demanding on the GPU as well. That being said, the experience was very playable at 58 average FPS on medium settings with a 1% low of 33 and a 0.1% low of 21. And last up in my testing is Metro Exodus. Now take the numbers on the screen with a grain of salt, because while the average FPS was definitely in that sort of 80 range, the 1% and 0.1% low numbers I'm not so confident of because I was using a different piece of software. I was actually using MSI Afterburner for this, and I'm not really confident the numbers were actually that low. All that being said, I will say this, there was not stuttering as far as I could tell while I was playing the game, and the experience was actually really nice with this GPU and CPU combination here. So I don't necessarily believe those 1% and 0.1% low numbers, but the average FPS does seem to be accurate, and I will just say that it was a smooth experience on my end. So that is it for this system. It is on the Facebook Marketplace and ready to sell. Hopefully it sells relatively quickly. And the nice thing about this case, with that side glass panel, with this sort of muted aesthetic look, but yet attractive and easy to blend into almost any environment, I actually do expect it to sell relatively quickly. So I am looking forward to getting this thing out the door, getting some more cash in the pocket, so I can go out there and buy some more used components, throw together more systems, and test them out. But I do want to hear from you guys. What do you think about this system, especially the pairing of 8 gigabytes of DDR3, which admittedly is a little bit weaker than I would like. I would love to put 16 gigabytes in here, but I don't have 2 8GB sticks just laying around. The i5-3470, and then an RX 574GB card, which I think the CPU and GPU are actually a really nice pairing. But I do want to hear what you think of all of the components in this system. Let me know your thoughts down below. And of course, if you like the video and you want to see more used price to performance goodness, give this video a like, share, subscribe, comment. All those things are very helpful to the channel. You can follow me both on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. And as always, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.